So what is the definition of culture? I mean, I think that's a great thing. I mean, police chiefs and all members of people in the profession always do a good job of like coming in on your first day and saying, I'm here to change the culture of the organization that we're in. And clearly there are calls to change the culture of policing. And yet we don't really know what it is. So what is the definition of culture? Like, what is it and what isn't it?
So culture, just on the sort of high definitional level, are the beliefs, the values, the behaviors, the attitudes that are shared by a group of people. What is unique when you start looking at organizations and organizational culture, such as what we are in the case with policing, is what we're looking at is those values, beliefs, behaviors that are expected, reinforced, and rewarded by the group. And that's a very important distinction upon the initial definition of, it's just the collected group values, beliefs, and behaviors, because when you say that these are expected, reinforced, and rewarded, those effectively become levers for us to make choices about culture, especially as leaders. And I think one thing I know we're going to be discussing is even who are the leaders. There are traditional leaders and there are informal leaders in that process as to who is actually setting expectations, who is demonstrating and role modeling, reinforcing, and how are we rewarded? What do we get for doing what is expected as the right cultural set of values, beliefs, and behaviors? So that's the point of departure on organization culture, is to see how there's two things. You have the culture that you currently have that has brought you from history to where you are now, and then there's the culture that we would aspire to. And I think that's where a lot of this conversation is going to be directed.
Yeah, very interesting how you mentioned that, like who is responsible for the culture of the organization. I just did a academy graduation here in San Francisco, and it was right in March. I mean, right during the initial quarantine and the initial lockdowns in terms of the coronavirus, and all the recruits are masked and outside and all 6 feet away for this graduation. And when I was addressing them, I felt like this was really the first time in my 20 years that I didn't have anything to say, because I hadn't been there. I mean, sure, I've been to field training and I've worked the midnight shift and worked my way up through the organization, but I couldn't really equate what was happening because I didn't have anything in my brain to kind of like match this current experience with. And I felt like I was at a loss of wisdom. So I guess the question for you then would be like, who is responsible then for culture? I mean, if police executives and police officers are all experiencing this tremendous shift and this real lightning rod moment that demands change and quickly at that, I guess we all have to chip in as best as we can in the areas that we can.
That's absolutely the case. I think we have a tendency, unfortunately, we've been hearing a lot in the last month or last 3 weeks or so that we need to change the culture of policing. And how do you do that? I think that's really what we're aiming to begin to address. I'm not sure we're going to fully answer because it is so complex. However, beginning to jump in on that question is going to really involve everybody. And I would encourage everyone who's joining us, everyone who's perhaps listening to this in a recorded fashion later, that we all have a key role in this. And critically, as I would just highlight from what I said earlier, is that this is not only about police officers, it's not only about people in the agencies, it is very much about everybody in society to consider where are we on this question of what do I need to do differently in order to get to a better result.